Modern life. Between careers, kids, and health, it can be mayhem. That's why we're here. I'm Dr. Lisa Varghese-Kroll.
And I'm Dr. Lonray Falusi. We're physicians, moms, and longtime friends who break it all down for you. Wondering how to juggle all the balls and still stay sane? Looking for advice but don't want to be overwhelmed?
Curious about how to make the most out of life for your family but enjoy it at the same time? You're in the right place. Welcome to Health and Home with the Hippocratic hosts.
In this episode, we're continuing our series on mothers in politics. We're talking with Judge Juli Mathew, the first Indian American woman elected to the bench in the United States. She'll tell us how she got there, how her experiences were affected by being a woman and an immigrant, and why you should consider a career leap too.
Hey, Lon.
Hey, Lise. How exciting is our guest today?
Woohoo!
Not only the first Asian American woman elected to the judicial bench in Fort Bend County, Texas, but also the first Indian American woman elected to the bench in the United States.
I know. And, part of our mission with our Mothers in Politics series is to pull back the curtain on the realities of running for office and really highlight, how important it is that more people who are not professional politicians really consider doing so.
Exactly. So we've interviewed a state senator in episode 22, a federal congresswoman in episode 24, a chief program officer from Vote, Run, Lead in episode 28, and a local councilwoman in episodes 34 and 35. So we're happy to add to that list today with an elected member of the justice system.
Judge Juli Mathew, the first Indian American woman elected to the bench in the United States, was born in India and raised in Philadelphia. She practiced law in both Pennsylvania and Texas before becoming the presiding judge of County Court 3 in Fort Bend County, Texas. Judge Mathew's court handles civil, criminal, probate, and juvenile matters. She believes in empowering women and ensuring that the judiciary reflects the diversity of its community, and she lives in Sugar Land, Texas with her husband and 3 daughters. Welcome, Judge Mathew.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here with both of you.
Thanks for being with us. So tell us about how you first got interested in your position.
So back in 2013, I wanted to run for judge for a spot in 2014. And at the time, I spoke to someone who kind of dissuaded me and said, the judge that's currently in that position is very well liked. You need at least $85,000 to run for that position. And the chances of you winning are not likely. So I chickened out, and come when the 2014 election cycle came around, a few months prior to this judge passes away suddenly.
Oh my gosh.
And so I realized, I could have had at least a good shot, I would have had some name recognition by that time, over a year of building and campaigning. So come 2016, I said, it was still in my heart constantly again and again, just kept coming up. And I was like, now is the time if I'm going to do it. And at that point in 2016, there were some conversations nationally about if there's a mistake in one's immigration application that your citizenship could be revoked. And so for me, that was such a huge constitutional violation. For me, it felt very unjust. And who decides what? Is it arbitrary? Is it capricious? Who decides it? So discretionary, all those type of things. And I was like, well, I think I'm suited for the county level. So I ended up running for a position higher than the one that I had initially considered. So very happy that I did that because here I am.
And congratulations.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Thank you.
You saw your shot and you took it. That's great. That's great.
Yep.
And you were an attorney for over 15 years before you ran for office and became a judge.
Yes.
So can you tell us what your thought process was as you were trying to decide, if it was the right time, the right career move for you? That seems like a big career move after, a decade and a half in one particular role. And then with that too, what advice do you have for people who are considering a major career change?
So in regard to the position itself, considering running, my county is very much like an equal split of ethnicities or races, like 31% Caucasian, 24% Asian American, 24% Hispanic, and about 21% African American. But none of the benches had any African Americans on it. None of the benches had anyone of other ethnicities in it. on the county level. And so for me, I really believe in Gandhi's words of be the change that you want to see in the world.
Yes.
And so I decided, I'm going to try to just, bite the bullet and do it, because it's not easy. I was thinking, especially within the Indian community and all of the negatives and naysayers. And I didn't grow up in Texas. I grew up in Philadelphia. So it takes a lot, but just went for it. Even my parents were asking me, are you really running? What does it mean? Have you done anything? Like, I remember my mom stopping me saying, you're running, but did you have to file somewhere? Do you have to do something? And I was telling her, filing is not yet, it's coming up. And she just didn't believe me. So it was just kind of an odd thing for an Indian female, a Malayali female, which I am, being South Indian Christian, kind of deciding I'm going to get into politics and put my life in the spotlight for other people to attack.
It's like, our people, we don't do that.
My husband, was not for it. I had gotten remarried in 2013, and I had a 1.5-year-old and I had a 6-month-old. So I was very much a new mom and getting used to working and having 2 young kids under 2 years old to juggle a full-time attorney job, as well as being a mom and a wife. And my oldest was 12. So it was not an easy decision, but at the same time, it had to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's so interesting that you're saying that, because when people wonder why we on a medical podcast have a subseries on mothers in politics, it's because we find that access to healthcare and healthcare inequities have so much to do with representation at the legislative, judicial levels, whether it's local, state, federal. And we really want to highlight that really, everyone should consider running. You don't have to have the last name Kennedy, as we've said. You don't have to be born into a dynasty. And so we love hearing these stories of capable, educated people who, did not come from political families, really heeding that voice inside you and that ambition to do it, because really it benefits all of us. Like you said, being representative of the community is so important, especially downstream, when you see how that affects the laws that affect real people like our patients, like our community members. So having said that, we also want to provide a very realistic picture to our listeners who might be considering it. So tell us, what was the hardest part about running and what was the best part?
In regard to running for this position, I think being a female, for example, like if I go to the mosque, I cover my head, I had to have the appropriate clothing, I had to have a shawl. If I go to the temple, I had to make sure that I had some sort of Indian outfit. If I go to a church, depending on where I am, if I'm block walking, it's a t-shirt and jeans or, sweats. It's like, sometimes you don't have the opportunity to go home and change. A lot of times we do it in the car. We're trying to get from one thing to another. One time, I think I counted, I was at 14 different places in one day.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know if necessarily, there's a lot of candidates who may not work as hard as me, but there is, it takes a lot of energy. And some nights I didn't have sleep. Or some days I'll be getting up at 5:30 or, leaving my house at 5:30. I remember one neighborhood had a Taco Tuesday once a month, and they start handing out tacos at 6:00 in the morning to their, everybody in their neighborhood. The HOA would pass out tacos. So myself, as well as another sitting judge right now, but a candidate at the time, both of us would be there at 6:00 to pass out our campaign material to every single person that drive through.
Nothing like that eye-opening taco.
And so, taco and coffee. This neighborhood really was very, they helped us out because everybody in that neighborhood, whoever stopped by to get coffee and taco, knew us.
I love that.
And so I think the best part was the fact that I got to meet so many different people. And, America really is a melting pot. I got to meet people from all ethnicities, races, countries, languages. You name it, I've met them at this point. And to be able to have that exposure where I'm learning, about other cultures, other people, everything. It was just an amazing, amazing, amazing opportunity. So I truly do treasure that aspect of it.
That's incredible. I don't think that you often hear about people talk about their campaigns as a learning opportunity and a growth opportunity for themselves in that way, right? So I wonder, that hopefully took off some of the stress. I think we hear a lot more about that, the stress of campaigning.
I definitely love people, but at the end of it, I think as there are days I'm like, I don't think I can talk to one more person.
I can believe it.
Oh, absolutely. So tell us a little bit more now about your role as a county court judge. What are your responsibilities? What's the time commitment? What does like a typical day look like for you after you get your 6 a.m. taco?
So I have not done that. COVID got away with that. That neighborhood, I don't think ever went back to having Taco Tuesday. Very disappointing. I know. But county court at law my court is a general jurisdiction court. There are 6 of us that handle all the different jurisdictions that we handle, which is juvenile, misdemeanors, and felonies. So anything including, minor crimes as well as, or, petty crimes, or people would like to say, and felonies like murder, adult misdemeanors, which is, a year or less of jail time. Mental health cases, when somebody gets committed into the mental health facility, we have to sign off on whether keeping them in 45 days, 30 days, 95 days, 60 days. So those requirements, a county court at law judge has to sign off on it. We also do land condemnations, unlimited jurisdiction. So if a government entity wants to seize your property and take it, then we appoint 3 commissioners who sit on it, who decides the value of the property. And if you don't agree, if it goes to trial, it also comes in front of us. We handle civil cases up to $250,000. We handle guardianships when somebody's born incapacitated or becomes incapacitated. Probate in Texas, when someone passes away, the will has to get probated. And a bunch of other things. We do handle a lot of different things. So at some point or another, I tell everyone, you will come through the county court system, whether you're alive or in death.
So it sounds like there is no one typical day. That's such a variety of different cases that you must see.
Yeah. So on Monday mornings, I usually have juveniles. Monday afternoon, I do my probate and guardianship docket. Tuesday mornings, I have my criminal docket. Usually if there's trial, it starts jury trials. It'll start Tuesday afternoon. So it'll go on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Then I come back to criminal again. And sometimes I squish my civil into my criminal docket as well. And then sometimes I'll put it in random days that I don't have anything else happening. I also started a juvenile intervention and mental health court for kids in the system who have mental health issues. And so I work with an organization called Texana, as well as our probation department, to give them counseling and therapy if they need it. They need help with their grades. We help them, give them tutoring. We provide pretty much everything needed for them to successfully complete their probation, because in the long run, it costs more to incarcerate somebody.
Absolutely.
Than to rehabilitate them. So we want to do everything that we can to make sure these kids become productive members of society.
Oh, that's important.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the opportunity cost to society too of all that lost potential. So that's wonderful. Do you find that, this is a lot on your plate. You've got everything, all your different dockets and activities and campaigning, block walking. Is it a challenge to juggle your elected office and everything that entails with family and, your own hobbies and interests?
So this evening, I actually went block walking with my middle child. And she said, "Mommy, I never told you this, but I don't like your job." I was like, "Why do you say that, Ava?" She's like, "Because you're not home. You're always leaving." And, you used to, a long time ago, you used to sit and watch movies with us. And I was like, "Ava, mommy's up for re-election. It's coming up in less than 30 days. It'll be over pretty soon. I'll get to spend time with you again. We're taking vacation afterwards." So the kids definitely, I know that it has an impact that I'm not here. And it is a lot of sacrifice you make, but I know that in the long run, it is worth it. I mean, in the sense of we broke some glass ceiling. I became the first Asian American on the bench in Fort Bend County. I'm also the first Indian American woman elected to the bench in the U.S. So breaking those things and opening up doors for other little girls and, other boys out there who are minorities, it's important. It had to be done.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like also as kids grow up and start thinking about what their futures are going to look like, your kids will have this idea that they could be a judge, they could run for office, and without having that model in their home, who knows if they would have even thought about that. So I think that's just amazing.
I think there are people within the community, sometimes the Indian community, when I say it, get offended. And I'm like, really? I mean, that bothers you? How does it bother you? And and I don't know if it's misogyny that I'm fighting sometimes, but that's like these microaggressions are very much real. There's another elected official that I know on a city level that really has, it made it a point to talk about it with people. Like, why does she say it? She needs to stop saying that.
Oh, goodness. Well, I love your attitude about that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I accomplished it. I'm going to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
It is what it is. Get with the program, folks. So you're talking about your kids. You have 3 daughters, which, by the way, I have 3 daughters also. So after this, I will be calling you to figure out how you survived. We are in the thick of it right now.
Sure, you're doing fantastic.
Well, we're surviving. Let's say that. And as you mentioned, 2 of your girls were under 2 when you first started thinking about running and campaigning. And you've described some of the comments that you've gotten from people who just, again, couldn't imagine that a woman with young kids would run for office. So, again, for all the women out there that are experiencing those microaggressions in their career, what's your advice for them in terms of how to handle those moments? Where do you dig in deep to figure out how to respond in a way that's helpful?
We're human beings. We're not perfect, right? There are times that I wish that my responses were different. Like I had the very first time that I ever encountered it, that I almost was dead stop in my tracks and didn't know what to say, was I was at a Chamber of Commerce event. And another Indian woman approached me and she's like, well, she was telling me about another political candidate and how he's probably not going to run anymore because he has a young child. And I'm like, I have young kids. And she's like, well, who watches them? And I was like, well, my parents are right now watching them. And a lot of times they are the primary caretakers because, I'm kind of busy. And, usually I'm picking them up from daycare, dropping them off at my parents. My parents will feed them, bathe them. I pick them back later on in the night. And it's usually what happened. And so she's like, well, when I was growing up, my mom was always home and kids need their parents. It's not your grandparents' job. And I was just kind of like, just didn't know what to say to her. And I was like, well, as long as my kids know they're loved and taken care of, I think they're okay. And recently, and I don't know if this is true, I never had a chance to actually research it and find out, but I was at a mental health summit and one of the presenters said that if you're there for your child at least 20% of the time, your child goes up into a well-balanced adult. And I was like, 20% of the time? And I was thinking about the kids in my court that show up, and I'm really kind of worried that are we as a society, as parents, not giving the amount of time that our kids really need? And I mean, at the same time, I was tapping myself on the folder. I'm a fantastic mom, but 20%, I got at least like 70.
Right. We can carry our numbers emblazoned on our chests with pride. I love that. Like Launray said, I really like hearing how how successful women kind of handle these things that all of us encounter, whether it has to do with our gender, our race, our immigration status, whatever it might be. And, you're an immigrant from Kerala, India. I'm a Malayali Christian, just like you. So once we're done, we'll have to figure out all our mutual friends. And so you've talked about how being a mom has informed your experience. How has being an immigrant informed your experience in running for office?
In the sense of, I think when, I think I have a better understanding of other cultures that come into my court. I've traveled significantly as well. I've been to over 25 countries. So I'm very much in tune with other cultures, other, people from all over the world. So I think some of the things that I see in court, I think I'm able to better understand it because of the exposure that I have had being born in Kerala, as well as the Indian community and the other communities that, are in Fort Bend County because of that immigrant background. Who would know the struggles? My dad, although we come from a pretty, middle-class family in India, having to come here with barely anything, living in a 1-bedroom. My dad was a pharmacist in India and making minimum wage in a factory. And those type of things and then standing outside in the bitter cold in Philadelphia, having to take 2 buses to get home from high school, getting out of the house at 5:30 in the morning, negative temperatures and things like that. Just when I look back at my life, I just, all those experiences have molded me into who I am, and it makes me a better person. It makes me an empathetic person. It makes me compassionate. Like the experiences that I have in life, just I'm tremendously thankful to God for those, because I wouldn't be where I am and who I am had I not had those experiences.
I think so too. And as you were saying earlier, I imagine that helps you to really kind of relate to I was always going to say patients. That's like my lane in medicine,
right?
I guess.
Exactly.
But the kids, the families, individuals that come across your court, right? Kind of understanding that a lot of people come from, struggles and may not have had all of the opportunities and may end up, in your court, not by choice, but that still have potential and, still have a whole life ahead of them, despite all of the kind of like structural, barriers or things that they're working through.
I mean, I think I was bullied quite a bit as a child, having Kmart shoes. And then also at that horrible time during high school when The Simpsons came on and Apu was the main character.
That was,
and like,
wow.
All those names like Camel Jockey, Turban Head, like just all of those things, like it was rampant. And then also there was at some point, and this is my Indian friends, I have to say, Judge Juli also came out around that same time. So growing up the whole entire time, I was Judge Juli, like nonstop. And so, it became a reality.
Yeah, they spoke it into an existence. We should thank them.
Yes.
So kind of thinking back then, what do you know now about holding an elected office that you didn't know then when you were first campaigning?
I knew nothing when I was first campaigning. Let me tell you that. Like, I did not know. So what happened is there was another judge, currently judge, a candidate at the time. She was actually appointed as the first African-American judge in Fort Bend County. And she lost that position due to some political things. And so she decided to then run for judge. And her dad had run campaigns before. And so she actually had picked the same court that I was going to run for. So basically told her, you're not getting it. And so we ended up working it out, and she ran. I'm judge of court 3. She's judge of court 4. So her dad, who had run campaigns, kind of decided to take me under his wings and became my campaign manager. So, a lot of things that I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know, had no sense, but I used to walk into a grocery store and just pass out my campaign push card to every single person I come across. My 12-year-old, we walk into HEB, our grocery store is HEB, walk into HEB and I start doing it. She would run the other way. Like, I don't know you, woman. I have nothing to do with you. If I go walking, I didn't care. I was shaking people's hands and saying who I am and asking them to vote for me. I don't know how I did it but my whole thing at the time was, what if it's that one vote that cost me the election? And in 2018, when the numbers came in, I had the highest number of votes of all of the countywide candidates.
Wow.
And I'm not at the top of the ticket. I'm at the the bottom, maybe mid-level ticket. But all of the, I had the highest number of votes. And, I'm so happy that I was that bold to do it. And even now, I'm not that bold because I don't want to go up to people and say, introduce myself. I just force myself to do it at times. I've not gone into the grocery store and done that. I've not gone to the post office and done that. But those were things I would go for a walk just in the park just so I can hand out my campaign cards.
Good for you.
Yeah, that does take a lot of guts. That's really impressive.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, and stamina.
Yes.
Having been through this now, why do you think it's important for people to run for positions such as yours?
I mean, who else would do it? If you really believe in, it has to be for a social, if you have to believe in a cause to do it, to give, to expend the energy and the passion. If you really don't believe in it, you won't have the passion for it. And I think that's what sets a person apart. You can be a politician, but at the end of the day, if you're not passionate about your thoughts, your beliefs, what you want to accomplish for it is a servant mentality. You are doing community service. It's not just a, whatever reputation of being a judge, but there's so much more to it. Like if you really don't want to help people, I don't think you're going to expend the type of energy or what's needed to do it.
And so along with that, what skills do you think are vital to be a successful candidate or a successful judge now that you're on the bench?
I mean, in order to be a successful politician, I really do believe that you have to be able to connect with people. Anybody, any stranger, to be able to have a conversation with them. Like, what is the connecting point? I think there are very few people in life that I haven't been able to connect with. And when people meet you and they feel connected to you, they're gonna be your advocate. They're gonna come out and vote. They're gonna be there for you when you need them. And I think that's a skill set that's so necessary in running for office, to be able to connect with people on a personal level, having a conversation about something that's relevant to everybody. I believe that is like the most important thing, to be able to connect with people and understand where people's circumstances or where they're at.
It makes a lot of sense because they are electing you to represent them. So in order to do that, in any kind of successful way and equitable way, you have to know who it is that you're representing. So that makes a lot of sense.
I think initially when I got elected, it's a general jurisdiction bench, and I was a civil litigator. So there were areas that I had not practiced before, and I did get attacked for that for sure. But any judge who gets on a bench, even if that is the subject matter they practice, wouldn't know every single detail about it. I mean, you have to spend a lot of time learning, and it takes a few years to get the hang of being a judge exactly. I'm not going to, it takes some time, like, where you're focus your energy on what can I do? How can I do this? What is needed of me? Those are things that, you kind of have to figure out, like where exactly, what's your comfort level. And then attorneys will come up and say, Judge, we just want to know that you're going to rule consistently. If that's your policy, as long as we know that it's your policy that you do a certain thing a certain way, then it's good to know. That helps us when we tell our clients, hey, this judge is a certain way. You may need to take that deal. You may need to plea that case. We may need to work out this something else,
And I think that's true really of all professions. It takes time to become comfortable, to become an expert. Takes years of experience. Now, how long is your term?
Every 4 years, I have to rerun.
Okay. And what are your goals for your time in office?
Right now, I really do enjoy being a judge. I at least intend to run maybe one more term after this. But at that point, I do believe in retiring. I do believe in term limits. There's no reason that somebody should hold on to a position for so long and not let somebody else come in or have a shot at it. And I've heard somebody else talk about it was a congresswoman who actually said, a competitive primary is what's needed, but that's in place of term limits. And I don't believe so, because being an incumbent, you're able to raise money, especially a congressional candidate is able to raise a tremendous amount of money than anybody who's going up against an incumbent, a newbie, So I really do believe that term limits should be in place.
Thank you so much, Judge Mathew, for sharing your time with us, sharing your journey. We're really hopeful that it's inspiring to some of our listeners who might, really take a look at their careers and their areas of expertise and how they might be able to kind of take a leap of faith, to run for an office that's relevant to them and make a difference in their community. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much to Judge Juli Mathew for joining us today and sharing her inspiring journey. For more info on her background and how you can consider running for an elected position yourself, check out our show notes at hippocratichost.com. So that's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening. As always, we appreciate you so much. Please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Subscribe and review us in Apple Podcasts. We really love when you do that because reviewing helps other people like you find our podcast. And we might pick your review to share in a future episode. For example, Cav Pod Fan said, a really fun podcast with interesting information and great host chemistry. I learned a lot.
Aww.
Thanks, Cav Pod Fan.
Aw, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, and talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to Health and Home with the Hippocratic hosts. Remember that all views expressed here are our own, not our employers, and all content is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as medical advice, nor the establishment of a doctor-patient relationship. Always consult your own physician or healthcare team for any medical issues.
If you enjoyed this episode, please rate us, subscribe, and tell a friend. And check out our website at www.hippocratichosts.com for show notes on this and all our episodes. Can't wait to chat with you next time.